Hello and welcome to the Comedian's Paradise. This is the podcast where we speak to intriguing comedy promoters, comedians, and clowns, actors from across the entertainment world. I give unique insights, have a conversation that needs to be had in entertainment, and will help comedians like you and me chase the comedy, the laughs, on every way we want to do it, and find our own niche. Now, today's guest is, have you seen Tony Soprano from The Sopranos? This guy is it. He has a name like James Bond. He is a man who has traversed the worlds of both comedy promoting and being a professional comedian, like Robin Perkins. But he's done it across the country and he's based down the South Coast. So he has his own yacht. And his name is James Bond, but his name is like Alderson, a bit like James Corden, but much cooler, and
Yeah.
it sounds like a beer. It's also a device that I use to try and remember people's names. I link their first name to someone famous. Welcome, James Alderson.
Well, thank you, Marvin. What an intro. That's very kind of you, mate. I've never looked at myself like that, but from now on, that's it. That's what's going to get me up in the morning.
You're going to say that before you go on stage.
Oh no, I'm just going to have it as a loop playing on my alarm clock. Your intro is going to get me out of bed in the morning.
It's £5, gents.
One-off payment, I'm fine with. Every morning, I'm not too sure if I could cover that, Marvin, but thank you.
But it's you've been on a few podcasts, haven't you? You've been in Simon's, now you've been in the Comedian's Podcast, Comedian's
Yeah,
Paradise.
yeah. I mean, not many. Never really asked that much, but yeah, it's nice. It's nice. I think it's a great. People are finding it a great way to sort of while away the hours when they're driving to gigs.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, far too much traveling in this game.
It's one of the things that I had a strange thing happen a while ago, and let me know what your thoughts are. But I went to a gig which wasn't very well run. It was an open mic gig a while ago. I think around May, no, April, and it was yeah, it was started late. There was no atmosphere at the start. It was very
Mm,
dead. There was about
mm.
4 people there. The MC bombed with 10 minutes of material, and then he
Oh,
bombed with 10 minutes of crowd work. The
dear.
first act tried to restore the room, but didn't succeed. Then the person who was running it comes in with a notebook and just looks at that, doesn't look at the audience, and then does terribly. Then the next act gets introduced, does terribly, and I come in a Zorro costume and bomb, and it seemed to be like I put the nail in the coffin, and then the audience left.
What a night!
Oh, apparently from other comics, it got a lot better afterwards when they just come.
Oh, okay. Well, on successive nights afterwards, it was fine.
Yeah,
Oh, maybe you just took a bullet, Marvin. I wouldn't worry about it. Yes, that's what we'll put it down to. We'll just put it in the autobiography, and that was one of those experiences. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what people can what can affect an audience is amazing. You know, in the early days, I remember someone winning a jackpot on the fruit machine in the corner of the bar, or someone making one of those noisy coffee machine, coffees halfway through a setup to a punchline. Those early gigs where you're in a mixed environment that isn't really perfect for a comedy night, and anything could affect it, anything at all. I've found recently a few gigs where I've popped up and there's no music playing before the show starts, and you just think, wow, people are just going to whisper to each other or talk really quietly or just feel awkward. You need a vibe going, don't you? So it could be something as simple as that just really doesn't set people up for a night of laughs. So yeah, who knows? But the more you do it, the more you realize that equation, that scientific equation you need to get right to get the audience up for it. But yeah. What was there music playing before the show that night?
no.
Nah, there you go. It's like a library, isn't it? Makes people feel very awkward, especially if it's a small crowd in a small room.
Yeah, because people don't like the attention to be on them.
Yeah.
They want, if there's just 4 of them, they feel like, oh,
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I ran a gig on Friday night, and no, No, Saturday night, and the audience were difficult, which I don't normally experience. I don't know. I don't normally find with my gigs. The crowd, they're loyal, they're regulars, and it was a new room, and the spotlight was very focused on the stage, and we couldn't work it out. And I was looking at it with my tech guy, thinking, I don't know what's happening here, because all the lights are off. The bar lights are off. Everything's off. It's focused. We've had great music, good setup. Everyone's happy. And then we realized the room is white, and the walls are white, ceiling's white, everything's white. And the spotlight, whilst focused on the stage really specifically, it was lighting up the room. And obviously not a lot I could do about that on the night, but we're going to have to get a lot more focused spot for the stage. But it made people feel, as you say, just very focused on, very exposed. And just like having no music before a gig, everything feels like the focus is on them. So you've got to somehow make them feel totally detached from the focus of the night, so that they can just relax and enjoy what they're watching. But I still come across things now where I just think, oh, I've got to fix that next time, just to make it a bit easier for the comics.
And people often say with comedy gigs that the hardest bit about running a gig is promoting it. Is that what's it called, like a Chinese whisper? That's like through popular belief, or would you say there is some truth to that?
I think it's hard to get traction at the beginning when you start it off, when you launch a comedy night, to build that traction, to spread the word, to get the word out in the local community, and to gain people's trust. That is exhausting. Such hard work. From 0 to 100 miles an hour, you can't have that first gig bomb, because then you've got a lot of hard work, and then you've got to keep the momentum going for the first few shows. Once you've got that formula right off the bat, right from the beginning, it's great. You hit a few bumps in the road. At the moment, I'm finding ticket sales tough because it's very sunny where we are down on near the equator, and it's half term. We've had 43 bank holidays. It's the parents aren't buying the tickets like they normally do, but we've got a formula where of how we set up a gig, how we get the word spread. But that is a lot of effort goes into those first 2 or 3 gigs in a new venue to get it moving. But once you get it going, it's like getting a huge rock moving. Once you get it moving a little bit, then you feel sometimes the gradient's going in your favor. So it is so rewarding though, mate. So rewarding. More personally, I find it more rewarding, particularly because I host all the gigs as well, and I love emceeing. I find it much more rewarding to see all the crowd turn up and then have a great night, say hello to me. I have a good time on stage, and they're all so appreciative at the end of the night. I find that much more rewarding than doing 20 minutes and driving home for 3 hours on my own. It can be quite a lonely experience, but you get more of a buzz having the whole night to sort of reward you for your efforts.
Is that in sort of what you said there has got into my mindset in terms of with a lot of comics trying to build a social media following now. I feel that that's the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I feel also in terms of perhaps going up in the circuit, you've got to build trust with different promoters and going up and up being bankable, and then getting all the paid spots. But
yeah, it's definitely right. It's definitely parallels there. You've got to do it in everything in life, I guess. Whether it's a new relationship or a new mate or whatever, you've got to get a lot of effort, haven't you? And just try your best and keep things moving. But I think as a comic, you've got to get the word out and just be bulletproof every single time, because that one time you're not, word gets out. So you don't want a crappy gig either at your new venue. The first gig might be brilliant. The second one, if that's a dead duck, the third gig is going to be almost impossible to sell tickets for. So you just gotta keep hitting, and exactly. I mean, I remember Rudy Liquid. I did one of my first tryouts at the Glee. I think it was Oxford, and I did great. I was buzzing. I was so relieved, and the other acts obviously put me in the shadow, but because they were pro, long-term pro great acts. But for me, I felt I had a brilliant gig. Rudy was like, yeah, that was great, but you got to smash it every time, mate. And that really hurt, because you want to take the compliment, you want to feel excited that you've had a great gig, and clearly, everyone enjoyed it. I had a great time. But then to have that right off the bat, Rudy saying, you got to smash it every time, mate. I just thought, oh, really? Have I? Oh, no. Because you don't realize in the early months of doing it that that's what's expected of you, to really make it, yes, you're going to have some flat ones, but to really make your mark in those early days, you've got to, certainly when you've been going a few months and you've got the material and you're starting to maybe get some paid middle spots or some paid gigs from time to time, you've got to really make a dent on things and earn your spot on the stage.
So you run a sort of a wide variety of different gigs. So you run like pub rooms, you run in big theatres, and like what's your experience in approaching all these gigs?
Wow. I don't run. I try not to run pub rooms unless it's a separate function room, and even then, not so much. I think. I mean, my general hope is to try and make it look like a proper comedy club. Do you know what I mean? I don't want, like you touched on before we started. I don't want it to feel like it's just some chairs in a corner somewhere. I want it to feel special for everybody to come and feel like, I'm deluded, really, is what I'm saying. I want people to think that this is a bespoke, wonderful comedy club that's mine. That's my own venue and everything. And it's the illusion. You've got to try and make the punters feel like they're coming to something that is bespoke and put together with care, and that everything just works. The seating, the lighting, the sound, the acts are great. The welcome they receive from the staff at the front door, it's all just got to feel like it's your own little comedy store. And that's my aim. I just want to, I think all promoters would love their own bespoke, a bit like Hotwater did. They were at the where were they at? The Holiday Inn, I think they were in Liverpool originally. I did the gig a few times there, and then they've got their own wonderful empire now. And we'd all, if we had the guts and the energy, want to do that as promoters. But in the meantime, I definitely want to have a venue and a space that makes the audience arrive and think, oh, this actually feels like a comedy club. Not some chairs and a portable PA and a table lamp pointing at the comedian and a fruit machine just going off in the corner. You just got to, just cover all your bases and make sure that the audience feel they're really in for something special.
With doing it in a pub room, the margins are obviously a lot tighter. But I mean, with the theatre, there's also the big added cost. I mean, when I've approached theatres, they always charge quite a big amount.
Yeah. I mean, it's a split usually, so they'll want a 70-30 or 75-25 split, obviously in your favour. But it's once they take off the ticket levies and we're trying to save the building levy and the help the Deirdre, who used to be an usher here, levy, and all these deductions, it can be pretty costly to put on in a theatre. And if you find these days, I'm loving finding village halls where there's not much to do it's a small town or a big village, and the community absolutely love it. And if you find a village hall that wants 150, 200 pounds to hire a 150 seater village hall, a lot of these places have got great staging, great tech, some spotlights, already a bar area. It can be a real viable option. And I know more and more people are doing that since COVID. More and more people are starting up local little community comedy nights because the locals absolutely take to it. They take to it as if because it's their own community comedy club. So it's a lot more viable financially as well. So yeah.
With one of the things is people are creatures of habit. That's one thing that like Spiky Mike put to me, and with it being a monthly night, one of the things I found running with some of the shows that I run, I found that they'll treat it like they'll come every now and then, but they won't come as often. Whilst when I made it weekly, it became like a habit, and they came back quite regularly.
Okay.
What would you say is like the cost and benefits of running like a weekly or monthly show?
Oh dear. I mean, I've never run a weekly show because I'm scared that you will saturate people's desire to laugh. I worry that, you know, it's a big investment up front. You know, you're putting your money down every week in the hope that that slightly limited audience you've got within a mile radius or wherever, if you put the gig on, are definitely going to come back every single time. And if they don't, it means that you've got to invest more and more in your marketing to spread the net, to spread your marketing mix, if you like, to catch more and more and more people. That's the risk. If you do it monthly, then you're giving yourself more time to get word out, you know. And how I start a gig usually is I'll start a gig and put it on every 2 or 3 months in a venue, and then increase it to every 2 months, then every month. And that's worked for me for over the last 11 years with all my gigs. Just leave them always wanting more. Leave the audience wanting, oh, is it another 2 months to the next one? And it sells out, and it creates that demand. It creates that interest within the community that, oh no, the next one's sold out. When is it? August. Oh, Christ. Okay, I'll have to get one for October then. And then before you know it, within a year, you're putting them together every month, and the audience aren't surprised because they're thinking, well, they sold out every time last year, didn't they? So you've always got to sort of leave that desire from the audience, because if you chuck too much at it, it's like me with cake, you know. I'll give up after a while, surprisingly. If you chuck too much cake at me, I eventually will give in. That hasn't come yet, but I will.
And what's one thing that I spoke to a lot of people are scared of venues closing down after because of like closing down after COVID.
Yeah.
What would you feel? How have you had to change, like being a comedian or being a comedy part since COVID?
I mean, to be actually honest, I found it easier to build comedy nights since I found the desire for audiences to go out and laugh easier. I found venues, especially going down the routes of community centres and village halls more than theatres per se, although I do have a few, I found them easier to work with and more keen to work with me. There's that hunger from venues and audiences, I think, more than there was before the pandemic. Obviously, costs have gone up. And initially, a year or so ago, I didn't feel that I agreed that costs had gone up, but certainly in the last 3 months, 4 months, venues have started really putting the prices up. So, I mean, I guess overall, yeah. I mean, I haven't experienced much of a struggle with venues at the moment. I haven't sensed that they're struggling. There's one venue where I had a regular new material night that I put on, and they've gone just for weekend nights now. They're not open during the week, but that's probably the only time I've sensed that venues are really having an issue. So, yeah, it's I think it's all good as far as I can tell, and as long as you can sell it out and give them the income they want, not only from bums on seats, but at the bar, you know, wet sales and food sales or whatever else they've got going on there at the venue, then everybody will be happy, I think.
Yeah, it's what. So do you still gig sort of like regularly, or are you like full-time promoter being MC?
Well, I mean, it's changed. It has changed over the last sort of 6 months, because since COVID, I've started about another, I don't know, 15, 17 clubs. And again, they're only monthly or bi-monthly. There's nothing too staggering about it, but they're all sort of between 100 and 400 seaters, and they're all most months. So it does take up a lot of my time, but I do sporadic gigs for other people and corporates, and hosting awards bits and bobs and things like we all do from time to time, the weird and wonderful things that we get asked to do. So yeah, I do want to still do that sporadically, but I'll be honest, I don't do it much now. But I do love running the gigs and hosting them. You know, it gives me the assurance that it's going to be a good night when you've got total control of everything. There's no risk in doing that 7-hour round trip for an awful gig to 150 stags and hens or whatever it might be, with a dodgy spotlight and a mic that doesn't work. It's you know that if you've got, you know, like with anything in life, if you've got full control of all of it, it should be all right if you graft and work hard enough. So it's I do miss doing stand up and turning up and doing 20 minutes and then going home, but all of my gigs are within an hour and a half of where I live, so it's nice to be home by midnight most nights.
Does running your own gig also help you be a better host than if you didn't run your own gig?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you've got the built-in risk, haven't you? You know that if you're rubbish, when you walk on stage and if you do 10 minutes of rubbish emceeing, it's going to be harder for that opening act to do well. Certainly for the first 5-10 minutes. Then the audience might go, oh, that first act was a bit rubbish. And then you've got the pressure after the interval of coming back on and doing better than you did to start with. Suddenly it all becomes very, very stressful. So I think that if you're running your own gig, it's a lot more, it's a lot more enjoyable. It's a lot more, there's a pressure to do well when you're emceeing it, but it's a lot more enjoyable, I think. I have to say, I didn't enjoy it when I did everything. So I used to welcome people at the door. I used to set up the PA. I used to set the spotlight up. I put the seats. I did all of that, and I'm past that now. Oh man, Marvin, I'm not doing that. And it costs money to have people to come and do that with you, work for you throughout the night. But now I look back and think it's worth its weight in gold, because I can now focus entirely on just being friendly to the guests, not stressed, not short-tempered, and just then go on stage and be a comic first and foremost, or an MC, whatever you want to call it. And I'm a much better MC because of moving all of that stress away and offloading it onto somebody else. But that's taken years to be able to get to that point where I've thought, I'm going to spend money on getting the right people for the job to help me put on a good night. And obviously, when you first start, you don't want that outlay. So I did that for years and years, even to my big gigs, unloading the boot and putting the tripods up and the stands and adjusting the levels whilst the acts are on. And I'm sure the audience were watching me thinking, what the hell is the compere doing, messing about with and the amount of people I got used to after the gig going, oh, you're a lackey as well, are you, mate? You're a roadie unloading you're helping them out, are you? I was like, no, it's all me. Everything is me. It's me. I'm the one that puts the leaflets into the shops in the town the weeks before the gig. I'm the one that putting the posters up in the newsagent. I'm the one that briefs the designers, sends them to print. I'm the one that goes on into the newspapers for the adverts and everything. It was, looking back, I'm pleased I did it then, because I definitely couldn't do it now. It's my background before all of this was I ran a marketing agency, so I know what you got to do to promote a business. So I'm lucky in that sense, and I haven't had to learn that aspect of it. But it does put a lot of pressure at the back of your mind, because you think, oh no, I've forgotten to put the banners up in the streets, or I've forgotten to email the database, or I've forgotten to all these things that you have to do to sell 250 tickets or whatever it might be, 100 tickets, 30, whatever you need. You've got to cover all your bases in marketing. And it's once you've got all those covered, then yes, that's a long way of answering your question. It's it makes me feel like it's a lot more enjoyable and good fun. I really do enjoy emceeing my clubs.
But when you see a lot of MCs now, and a lot of, what do you kind of look for if someone's applying to MC for you? And also, what are examples of bad MCing and good MCing?
Well, come and watch me anytime. So the bad examples. I mean, because I've got a few doubles and triples in the night, in evenings now that are happening. I'll be honest with you, I turn to acts that know really well, that I've seen MC a lot, and whilst they're very, very funny guys and very quick with the audience and their interaction, they've got to be just so likable. Compare an MC, even if like me, it's a trick and you're actually a horrible person. But as far as the audience is concerned, you've got to be friendly, affable, just a cheerful character that isn't just on stage like that, but to the audience when you're walking to the loo or going to the bar or whatever you're doing. You've got to be one of those people that the audience wants to sort of connect with. For a comic, you can when you go on for 20 minutes, you can get away with just being that persona, then come off, go through the green room, out the back door, off you go. But the MC's there all night. You're stuck with the audience. So whenever I book an act that's filling a gap that I can't do, it's always got to be someone that I really feel can play the role, for want of a better phrase, the whole night, not just when they're on stage being great, but actually just be a good host for the evening.
Yeah, that's so big. I mean, there's one lady who I have sometimes MC my shows called Siobhan Dodd, and she has incredible likability. I've never seen it like with anyone else that I've seen MC. Just straight away, people like,
I mean, some people have that. I don't, but you've got to do it for the evening, and I've had to certainly change who I am, because I am a little bit sort of not introvert, but I'm not with strangers. I'm not the most sort of, when you meet me at a house party or whatever it might be, I'm happy to talk, certainly more since I've done comedy, but you do have to really push yourself out there and be an extrovert and friendly, smiley. I've had people say to me when they've come to my gigs, "Oh, I saw you in Sainsbury's the other day. You didn't look very happy." And these are people who see me, and these are people who see me on comedy nights, and I always say to them the same line, which is, I'm afraid I'm not the life and soul of the freezer section, because people, if they know you do stand up or you're in that game, they automatically think everything you're going to say is either humorous, funny, sarcastic, or has got a quick wit. And it can knacker you, really. When I was at a gig at the boat show, my calf tore, and as I was walking on stage, as I was walking about on stage, and when I told people the next day, and I was in hospital and all this stuff, people were laughing, and I was just like, "No, my calf tore, mate," and they're laughing. I'm just like, "That's not funny." And they're like, "Oh, it actually tore." And I go, "Yes, I'm in hospital now." I'm like, "Oh, mate, sorry." Just think, come on, it's just shattering. It's just so tiring sometimes, and we've all had that. Everybody who tells someone that they, whether it's open mic or whatever, it's hard to get that across. But yeah, it's yeah.
it's one of those. Yeah,
I think that's my feel. I think that as a comic, you can get up and do your thing. Great, 20, 30 minutes, whatever it might be. But when I'm looking for an MC, that's it. It's got to be someone that can really be that person all night. I don't expect them to come out into the crowd and start, making friends for life. But if they're seen and if they're, around for the evening, they've got to be something a bit different, I think.
one thing I've seen, and this is a few character acts, like, what's his face again? Really lovely guy, Howard Smith. When
Yeah.
he doesn't MC as Keith Platt, he just does a set. But if he MCs, he plays himself. He just says it's a lot harder, and it's like
Yeah.
the only person who I've heard that's a good MC as a character is President Abunja. Everyone else, I hear that if you're going to MC, you do it as yourself.
Yeah. I can't imagine. You see, Troy Hawk does a lot of audience interaction. Angelos Epithemu, he does a lot of audience interaction. It must be so hard to stay in character, because you don't know what people are going to say, and you have to be such an expert in yourself, in your character that you've created. You have to have every possible outcome covered. You have to have such a natural affinity with that character, I think, to be able to freewheel like that. It's hard enough when you're just you, because I'm sure you're the same when you're on stage. You're sort of yourself, but you're not really yourself when you're on stage. Not really. It is a slight tweak of your own persona or an exaggeration of who you are. I grew up in a very working class area, and I do up that more when I'm on stage. Wasn't intentional, but now I realise, looking back, I'm a little bit more, a bit more like that. And I think you tune into that naturally over time to find your own persona when you're on stage. But as a character, to just go out into the audience and just talk and have that answer in character, to come back to I couldn't do it. I can't imagine how hard that must be, to keep your brain in that gear all the time. Very clever.
I remember I emceed once. So, long story short, if I'm doing a set, I went to the clown school in Guerilla and I did a bit where I did this Spanish gibberish and did certain tasks, and it went very well.
Yeah.
So now I come up on stage, and if I'm doing it, I play Zorro. But I do it quite poorly because, I'm a Chinese looking guy. The accent doesn't sound right. And when I try to MC as that character, it creates a weird atmosphere afterwards. Whilst it does get laughs, but it's awkward and it's strange.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. Whilst if I MC as myself and it goes well, it creates a nice, light feel and people feel welcome, and it's great for the acts. But it may be funny when I interact as Zorro. It's hard for someone to follow it, and it's a bit awkward and strange. The thing, even though it gets laughs.
Yeah, I guess as an MC, you've got to sort of disarm the audience, haven't you? You've got to disarm them and make them feel like they're totally at ease. Is disarm the right word? Maybe not, but make them feel totally at ease and comfortable and naturally ready for whatever might come up on stage. So I guess that it might be because they're just a little bit sort of unsure of what's happening with your act, that's making them sort of think, I don't know if this is is this right? Is this what the night is? Is this what we're, and then someone else comes on, total gear change to maybe a straight stand up, for example. And they're like, oh, because I sometimes get carried away. You may or may not have noticed this. I've got verbal diarrhea. I sometimes get carried away when I'm on stage, and I'll just talk to someone and blah, 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 blah. Won't do any material, which is a comic's nightmare for an MC, really. You've got to try and get the audience a little bit adjusted to a joke before someone comes on and does 20 minutes of them. And I'll just interact, have a laugh, and then bring on an act. And I think, oh, I really should have just got them a little bit more tuned in to what they've got to expect for the next 20, 30 minutes from the act I'm introducing. If you can get a really big laugh out of something, that's fine. But a lot of comics will say, oh, it's nice if a MC will end on a joke before they bring someone on, or do a couple of jokes before they bring someone on. So yeah, I think maybe that's probably it. I think as a character, often it's a little bit tricky to stay in character when you're interacting and freewheeling like that. But yeah, your job as an MC is to obviously get the audience feeling relaxed and ready. Even if they've not laughed absolute barely laughs, you're making the room chilled and but with enough energy that let's have a great night and a great laugh. But yeah, you'll find your little. Do you enjoy doing Zorro MCing? Or does it make you feel awkward as well?
No, I just enjoy having a laugh with it, getting on stage and making people laugh. That's why I still do it. It's just I like. Yeah, I don't enjoy performing as much as me anymore.
Okay.
But when I put on a show, I like the feeling of them having a good time.
Yeah.
That's why I still host as me.
Yeah.
But I notice when I MC a Zorro, it gets a bit awkward. So that's why I've sort of stopped doing it. But people have suggested maybe I could do it in the second half. But as Zorro, but first half as me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely, there's stories of Peter Kay, who when he did a lot more obviously a lot more MCing, he'd come in a lion costume or whatever. But there were loads of acts over the years that would come on later on in the show to inject some energy into it. Do mix it up a bit. I think in the past, in Christmas shows, in my big show, it's about 500 seater that I've been going for about 10 and a half years now. I've come on in the second section with those for the Christmas show with those, they're like trousers that make you look like you're on the shoulders of a snowman. Do you know those ones?
Oh,
And it's obviously it's Christmassy and it's silly and it's a bit more festive. So I guess it's a bit more of an excuse for me to do something a bit daft, because that's not typically me and when I'd MC. But yeah, I wouldn't come on. Yeah, I think you've nailed it. I wouldn't come on in the first section and with something of a curveball for a straight crowd. Obviously, if it's marketed as a crazy night of some description, then why not? But I think for a straight stand-up night, yeah, first up, come up and ease them in gently, and then second section, why not live it up with something a bit different?
Yeah, that's true.
Try it out.
I think I will, but
Yeah.
maybe it may be a bit later on in the second half. But I do find that in the second half, once they relax so much more. Like I've seen most acts, they seem to perform. The easiest spot I've seen in a lot of shows is in the second half, beginning of the second half.
Oh yeah, it's a sweet spot, isn't it? And that's historically always been the case. I think that's why you put your tryout spot in the middle. For all the big clubs, that's where they put their tryout act. I think it's because they've had the drink, one more drink. They've seen how the vibe is, how the night's going to pan out. They've had that first act, the MC. They've had a wee in the interval. They had a little catch up, and they're just a little. Then obviously the final section could be very tough when you're closing a night, because they've had another drink or maybe two more drinks. They're getting a little bit tired or even bored, dare I say, or just they've seen two comics, that's enough for them, and they want to get off, but they're going to stay. And it can be a little bit harder. But yeah, that middle 10 or 20 minutes is usually perfect. Usually,
yeah. I find that if someone, maybe they've had a bad night, but it does often tell me a lot if I should book them for other shows if they don't do well in the sweet spot of that.
Yeah.
Because I've seen so many people do well in that bit. If you're not doing well in the easiest spot of the night, but maybe you've had a bad day. I don't know. I haven't seen I think that's a good indicator.
Yeah, I think so. You're giving them the best chance, aren't you? That middle bit, that is the best chance anyone's going to ever have of doing their best. And the problem is, of course, when do you move them to open? Because that is a whole different ball game. And as you said yourself, if the MC has an off moment and doesn't do exactly as well as he usually does or she usually does, and it's okay, or the audience are a little bit tough, and the last time you booked that act, they did 10-minute middle spot and smashed it, and now you're moving them up to a 20-minute opening, what a responsibility. And I've seen that transition fall on its arse. I've just seen, you just went, oh no. They say, yeah, I've got 20 minutes, and they haven't. They've got 14 minutes if they talk slowly. And you're going from that sweet spot to quite a responsibility at the beginning of the night. So, yeah, you've got to really, you've got to see that middle act smash it more than once. Smash it every time, and then move them onto the opening 20.
God,
Gamble.
you must have some horror stories of I noticed that the most annoying part of running a gig and emceeing it is when someone does badly for a longer spot. And when you've had it for the opening spot do badly for 20 minutes and the next spot do badly, how have you felt about that? And how have you recovered?
Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible. I mean, touch wood, and it's awful, I know, to say this out to the industry, but I only tend to really book acts that I know. Before I ran so many clubs, I've been gigging on the circuit a decade, and now it's like, well, I'm having to stretch my net a little bit broader, but generally I book acts that I've gigged with at some point over the years. So you know that if it's a bad time, it's probably there's something else going on. If someone's not hitting the points in their set, there's something happening in the room somewhere. There's something not quite on with the audience, and you spend your 20 minutes trying to assess what the hell's going on. Like I said, with the light, with the white room, the audience feels a bit more exposed, and so they're not comfortable in the room much. But other gigs when I've had to go on after old acts have died, it's you feel sick, really. I think that's the only way you can, it's, to be honest, it's worse when you MC like an absolute dog and ruin it, and bring on an act who then does really well, because you're up there MCing thinking, well, this is a tough crowd, I don't know what's going on here, and then the act goes on and smashes the roof off the place, and you think, oh my god, I was awful. And then I've had that. Yeah, I'm sure I've had it quite a few times, but I've had it one memorable awful time for Spiky Mike, actually, you mentioned, and I was filling in for him where he usually emceed every gig, and I turn up and I was on a roll. I was loving life. I was having a great time gigging and emceeing, and I went up and did all my usual spiel and thought I was going well. No, not at all. Absolutely hated me. And I brought on, I think it was Andy Askins. He absolutely ripped it. And then I had to go on to a crowd who basically wanted my head. And I was sat in the interval thinking, I just feel sick. I've got to go on after this. And they're all having a lovely time chatting and having a nice interval and a drink. And I'm going to have to ruin it by standing up in front of them for another 5 or 10 minutes. And it got easier. And they eased up a little bit on me. But, oh, God. I think you can recover from an act not doing well, but you can't recover if the MC's rubbish all night. It's very difficult. The MC has got to be the real cornerstone of a gig. It's he can or she can or they can hold a whole average night a lot higher in everyone's estimation. If that person can really come on and really light up the room, they'll go away loving the night, even if the acts did an average delivery for whatever reason. It's such a critical part they play, and underrated, I think, by many. MC, you cannot have a rubbish MC run a gig. You just can't. It's just deadly. Like we said, that person, like I said, with the people who I get to come and do, that person has got to be someone that everyone's looking forward to seeing come back on stage in a minute. So they're probably obviously they're loving the comic that they're watching. That's the key of the night. After all, it's a comedy night. It's not an MC compare night. But yeah, they mustn't be thinking like they were that night for me at Spiky Mike, thinking, oh God, that tubby bald bloke's coming back on in a minute. And what a letdown. Oh dear, makes you feel ill just thinking about that night. That was years ago as well, probably about 6-7 years ago, maybe more than that. Ouch.
What did you do? Did you just introduce the acts? Boom, boom, boom.
No, because I'm deluded, totally deluded. So I felt ill having to go back on there, but I thought, it was so odd. It felt like they'd all had a chat beforehand and said, you know what, Spiky Mike's not here. Should we just really make it obvious that we're not happy that Spiky Mike's not here? I was just asking questions to people like you do, one-word answers, or just grunts, or just looking at each other with their answers. I'm thinking, what's happening? And it's, we've all had those gigs where you go and do your 10, 20 minutes and you smash it like on the bounce, 3 or 4 gigs, and then out of the blue, you just get swiped from, and just knocked sideways because you have an awful gig. And you think, I've just had 4 gigs this week or this month that are absolutely brilliant. Why has that just gone horribly wrong? And you're due a bad one, don't you, when you have a run of good ones? And I was just having that moment where I was having such a great time that month, and then this just came and really made me realize that I felt, I was not bulletproof. And it was so sad. This is pathetic. I've not told anybody this before. I just bought a new car, new for me, and loved it. And I parked outside the venue. This is pathetic. But to make myself feel better, I made sure I left at the end of the night amongst all the audience, so that they could see that I was good enough to be able to buy a car. Because I thought with my performance, they probably thought, oh, he's bound to be on a bike or or just, I don't know, sleeping on the streets. This guy's so bad, he can't afford anything. How has he even got clothes? And so yeah, I slowly just walked down with everybody thinking, I'll just let them see that I've actually got a car. That's not a not a junk heap. That's so shallow, isn't it? But that's how bad I felt. I just wanted them to know that I wasn't a total abject failure.
Yeah.
It's a secret snippet for you there, Marvin. All right.
Is it? Yeah, it's a lot of ego bashing in comedy. It's the biggest, and there's a bit like, what's it called? Have you watched that podcast with Guy Ritchie and Joe Rogan?
I've seen bits, I think, just on the socials, but not dived in too much.
There's this bit that I'm trying to sort of program into me, and like there's a bit that I really find interesting, but it's very difficult to get into it. It's all well saying you should do this and that, but when you get in an angry or tough moment, it's hard to put it in practice. But he always puts into like being the master of your own kingdom. And I try and play that in, like he says that the world out there is going to try and tell you who you are, and then you've got to be inside and tell yourself who you are.
Yeah.
But then I try and put that, but then I'll have a bad gig and like, oh fuck.
Yeah, there's just so many variables, aren't there, that change the outcome of any situation you're in life. So there's always going to be a curveball, and that was mine, I think. But yeah,
I think there's a big thing, especially in the circuit as well. I see a lot of comics that I know, like friends of mine, really having their ego damaged because they won't get booked by certain promoters. But but I look at them and say, look, you're a good comedian. You know you're good. Stop letting it like you're putting your. I don't know. I just see some of it a bit like you're on the corporate ladder and you're trying to win the approval of everyone else, and you're putting everything there. Whilst you should put, are you a good comic? Know that. If you're making a lot of people laugh, and just some cunts won't book you, some will. That's it. What's the big deal about it? Like
it eats you alive, though, doesn't it? I think you can't. Certainly in the early years, it really does kill your ego when a promoter just won't book you, or they book you for a tryout and you do really well, and then they still won't book you. It's like, oh my God, what's going on? And I think when you feel that you're a little bit more resilient and you're maybe a pro act, then that change. I mean, you still have those promoters that won't book you, but it changes a little bit to being that one person with his arms folded in the audience who won't laugh, and you got 99 people laughing, and that one is just staring at you. And I think that's the new promoter who won't book you when you're a famous act or that one person in that order. There's always somebody, and I always pick on them a little bit if they're like that, because people around them know that person's a miserable sod, or they didn't want to come out, or whatever. They're the designated driver. So yeah, it's our egos are so precious, aren't they? In this game, without a doubt, and we can't help but obsess over them, over the people that don't rate you. I always found it very painful when I did a gig for someone that I felt went really well, very well, and they still didn't reply to emails. But I'll be absolutely honest, I have had acts who have done well that I've then not gone on to book. There's just something, it's not just I think it's 90% what you do on stage, but there's other little bits along the way that make a great comedian. And that is, reliability, that likability to the, off stage, just professionalism generally. There's other things, and sometimes that remaining 10% you can, really, really disproportionately outweighs the other 90. It shouldn't, but I think that a lot of promoters will say, yeah, they're great, but they were late, or they said something to somebody, or they did this, they did that. Lots of things, just like in any industry, like an impact on it. So I look back and think, well, I did smash it for that promoter, but he probably just didn't like me.
Yeah.
If we're just human at the end of the day, and he just thought, yeah, James, he's a right tool. And didn't even like that I did well on stage. Do you know what I mean? You can just grind against people sometimes without realizing it. But yeah, our egos, very, very delicate.
Do you find that that one of the hardest things to manage as being a booker, and like when you get, because you must get a lot of requests for Max, and like you got to be very careful about how you communicate things, and you got to be, yeah, as you said, we're very precious.
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't get approached much compared to a lot of my comedian or promoter pals. I know some promoters who get bombarded, and maybe I've got a reputation for being a bit of a dick, and that I don't book people that I don't know, because I think maybe I don't know why, because it's weird that I know promoters who've got maybe 3 clubs, and they get dozens of emails or Facebook messages a day, and I just don't. And so I'm lucky in that sense. But yes, it's very, very, very tricky to reply to an act that I've looked and don't think I can book, or don't have a gap for them, or whatever. The answers are so important, because I remember I think it was Ealing Comedy Club. I don't know if that's still going, or the original one. It was about 11 years ago, so I'd only just been going for about a year. And when you're first starting, you're emailing everybody, aren't you? Can I have a gig? Can I have a gig? I don't mind. I'll do it for free. I'm good. I'll do 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute. Let me just come and do a gig. And this reply came back. Have you looked at our website? Have you looked at the caliber of comedians that we book for this club? Go away, and when you're at that level, get back in touch. And I just remember feeling like an inch tall. And I looked on the website, and the funny thing is, I looked and I saw a few people that I knew, but as in I'd gigged with, and they were going into the pro circuit, and obviously I was just a measly little new kid on the block of the open mic circuit a little bit. And so I thought, well, hey, I know that person, and I'll gig with them the other day. But it doesn't matter, does it? If they've done 1,000 gigs and I've done 150, there's a world of difference. So, but that sort of approach is just a little bit harsh. There again, he might have been getting dozens of emails a day, you see. I don't know how that feels. I would probably explode, not at the person, but mentally, having to handle constant messages wanting gigs. Yeah, I do. I mean, it's very tricky when you're booking pro acts. If you're trying to fill a 500-seater theatre or venue, you've got to get a name. You've got to, unless you're willing to spend hundreds and hundreds of pounds on marketing, you've got to get somebody that they'd recognise off of a TV show. And I have to, half the time, go out and say, hey, I'm after an act who's got a profile, maybe off of Mock the Week or the Apollo or Comedy Central, even something like that. Could you get in touch? Or replacing an act that's had to pull out, that's got profile. Can someone get in touch? And I'll get people in touch who don't have a profile, which I get, because you've got to put yourself out there, and you've got to go for gigs that we'd never get anywhere if we didn't try and strive for gigs that are slightly out of our reach. Usually, we all do that in any job we got. But how do you reply to that? Because you can't reply to that without it sounding like A, I'm a dick, and B, hurting their feelings, because they're not a profile that's gonna satisfy the 450 people who are there to see someone who has a profile. Do you know what I mean? It's such a tricky job to actually not to make everybody think you're actually a decent human being when you're a promoter, because you've got to make decisions and calls and reply to people that might suggest that you're not a decent human being. It's a hard juggling act, but and I haven't found how to juggle yet.
Is it a bit like being like a really attractive woman that gets hit on all the time, and then knowing how to deal politely?
Well, I guess I guess
Right.
that's a good analogy. But I'm an attractive lady who's not getting hit on enough to give me the experience of how to give them knockbacks. So I'm just stood there in my heels at the minute. I'm pleased that I'm not getting hit on all the time. And getting more drunk. I don't know. This analogy's going wrong somewhere, but it's
I'm getting in trouble
it's a good.
now. I'm going to get cancelled, James.
But yeah, you I think you nailed it. The it's so important to try and sort of keep communicating and keep talking to people, but it's the ego's a tricky one for all of us, I think.
Yeah, that bit scares me. Even
Yeah.
with some, yeah, I'm bad at that. I'm the devil at that.
Well, I mean, the problem is, we're all precious, and we're doing a job that is so hard when to for our own mental health. You know, like we've already touched on, you're not quite yourself when you're on stage. But when someone says something in the audience or heckles you or something, it's so hurtful. But you've got to carry on, and you can't let it show you that it's hurt you. You know, so we're so fragile. We're putting ourselves in such an exposed situation on stage, on our own, in front of it could be hundreds of people. There's going to be someone in that audience that hates you, even if you smash at it. So you're so exposed, and but we got such egos as well. I know people don't like to talk about it, but we're basically standing out there saying, "Hey, I'm the funniest here, so give me your money and have a listen." I know and so it's such a pedestal that we put ourselves on and put such pressure on ourselves, and then with that ego, we're just putting ourselves out there to say, "Let us know if you don't like it." And they do. Someone will say, "I'm waiting for the comedy to start, mate," or whatever they say, and you think, "Oh God." And then if you're a character act, it's even harder, but you've got to keep going, you've got to keep in the zone, keep trying to be funny, and then come off into the green room and gently sob to yourself.
Do, what, do do you prepare like beforehand to get sharp? Because I know Ben Vandervelde says that he does all these exercises to get sharp to deal with all sorts of things as a host.
I
And
mean,
obviously,
he's got skills. I wouldn't say I'm not as much of a scientist about it all as he is. I find that if I overthink it, I'm not as good. I'm quite like not thinking about it and walking out there with the excitement of what is going to happen in my head. Um, I mean, I know I think he's taught people, hasn't he, at MC and stuff. I'd be intrigued as to what he does, but I personally, I like to just go out there. Sometimes I'll have something topical that's at the back of my mind that I might bring up throughout that opening 10 minutes. But no, I just like to jump out there and see what happens.
I I did work. So I've spoken to. I've had Danny McGinley, who wrote that comedy article on how to MC, and I also interviewed Stevie Gray, who wrote an article on that.
Right.
And I went to a course with Ben Vandervelde. He said, like, what he does is he compliments the audience. So he love
Mm,
bombs them, and then he picks on an attribute and he plays like an assumptions game. So,
okay.
like, you mentioned before, like, like, this is my son's room, you don't mention all of that.
Yeah.
And then what you said that you make assumptions like, oh, are you a kids entertainer? What's the bet? And then he says he plays assumptions, gives a compliments, and he ascribes a character or something to someone. With
Yes.
me, someone called me like tech support for.
Yes. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I got the jacket, I got the glasses, I got the moustache. Like Freddie Mercury married a tech support or something. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
And you didn't mention a bit about heckles, but he does a lot of exercise. Like you point out items in the room, you point what it's not, or you point the first item and last item, and that's to get sharp. Um, like Danny McGinley said something about he wants to find out who the characters in the room are, so he gives the audience 3 cheers. Seen live comedy? Are you from out of town? This is the first time you've done those things. And he mentioned one little thing also in the podcast that was quite interesting. Like I can't remember what question he asked, but he said something on question who's from out of town but doesn't want to say, and then he gets the someone to point the other person out,
Okay.
and then he picks on a person picking on the other person
Mm.
to engage with them.
Oh yeah, good trick. I mean, I'd be fascinated to see how, because all those things you say are things that I totally am aware of that you do when you're emceeing, when you've emceed a lot, they just happen. But to have someone who's actually identified those is very clever, because you know you don't even know what you're doing when you're emceeing for years and years, but it happens to be identified by Ben, and taught. It's just brilliant. I mean, it's the trick I've got is, if you end up with a tool in the audience who's being a bit of a knobhead, the best way to disarm them usually, and I'll be absolutely honest, it's usually a bloke, usually, is to talk to the other half, is to talk to the partner or the friend, because they're usually the quieter one who's a little bit more sober or a little bit more sensible, and you can get quite a bit of mileage out of that, because they will then disarm the idiot, by giving him a dig or saying something that's derogatory or something, and they'll be a little bit more conversant as well. So that's a good way to, because then when he starts talking and he's being an idiot still, she or they next to them are saying shut up, and you say I'm talking to them, mate, and it's given the focus away
Ah,
from the idiot. It's quite a nice thing, that I've discovered along the way. I mean, obviously most of us want to run a mile when there's an absolute idiot in the audience, but if you've got to keep going, and that's sometimes quite a good little trick.
yeah. One thing I'm bad at dealing with the hecklers, so I'm putting a lot of work into trying. Like at the moment, I'm doing something stupid, but I'm trying to remember all the sorts of ways people are trying to attack me and put me down, and then
Mm.
try and find the flip side to that. And then
Yeah, I mean, they. It's good to have those things, and there's a lot of cliched responses that we've all got in a desperate situation at the back of our mind. You know, can we get this guy some colouring in, please, to do, because I've got a show to get on with, or you know, I'm in the middle of something at the minute, mate, we'll talk later, or whatever it is. It's those are like emergency ripcord sort of phrases that a lot of people throw out. um Personally, I find that the most cheerful, upbeat, positive, smiley, sort of quick, MCs are the ones that get heckled least. You know, I would imagine that Ben doesn't get a huge amount of heckles. You know, most of the MCs that I know actually that do it professionally probably don't get a huge amount of heckles, because if you're up there and you're lively, it almost makes people feel, oh, I don't want to ruin this. You know, if it keeps going and you've got energy and you're happy and jolly, it's there's some MCs that aren't that. I don't know how they do it, because I can only do it with energy. I can only do it animated, jolly, cheerful. The MCs that get up there and yeah, they're friendly enough, but they just stood there. I just think, wow, they're great, because I can't be that brilliant without faking it with some energy and some movement and some life and soul on the stage. Um, you'll always get hecklers, and someone will hit you with something out of the blue. I did that comment I just said, you know, back, it was only a few weeks ago, and I was talking, and we were having an absolute ball. I was really enjoying myself. The crowd were having a great time, and I got talking to these three brothers, and we had, and the youngest brother said, "Oh, what do you do?" And he said, "Oh, I'm a boat builder." And I said, "Oh, what part of the boat are you working on at the minute?" And I reeled off a few technical terms of boats. And he went, I'm working on the outside. I thought, well, don't get too technical, mate. Blow us with your complicated phrasing. And it was just a fun. We were having a bit of banter and fun interaction. And the middle brother we had a good laugh. And then I think it was actually the younger brother. I said, "Oh, what's your story, mate? What'd you do?" He said, "I'm just waiting for the comedy to start, mate." And you just think, oh, come on. We had some real momentum there. Everything was fine. And I mean, luckily, because the audience were having a good time, they're all aside and they're all like, ooh, and just laughing with me. And I was laughing because I just thought I think I just find it hilarious. Um, if you're not having a good time, and that phrase comes from the audience, it kills you, doesn't it? Just it's just a blow to the heart. If you're having a great time, you can laugh it off, but ouch, if you're really struggling and that comment comes from the crowd, you just want to go home.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, why do they say it? Do you know what I mean? What's the point in that? It's just and we've had that line has been thrown to all of us over the years. It's just think, wait, they're just trying to be the funny one, aren't they? But it's most of the time people look and go, "Shut up, mate! What are you doing?" Still hurts.
Well, one of the things, I think we mentioned it a bit at the start, but yeah, there are a lot. There most people in comedy audiences are pretty nice, but there are the odd tosser, and we'll look at that.
Yeah.
But it's as long as they're not a workable tosser, but not an unworkable tosser.
Yeah. I mean, I had a gig. I think it was just a few days ago, and there were tossers. The crowd. There was about 19 of them, and when I walked in, my heart. I was like, oh no. But when they sat down, good as gold, up for a laugh, the right sort of tosser. And that's what you want, a room full of tossers, but they're ready to listen and laugh. There's a gig, I think it was towards the beginning of the year, first of the year in this particular venue, in the middle of a little village, and I looked out and there was a load of shouting happening in the front row, and then 3 guys had moved their chairs from the back to go on the front row next to all their other mates. And I was like, oh no. And I was sort of talking to the acts backstage going, I'm sorry, I mean, we're literally got to get going because the opening act was doubling, and I said, I can't really do anything. And then she was like, oh, just fine, just we'll deal with it. And I said, I know, I'll do what I can because I was emceeing, obviously. And went out, and they were absolutely mint, absolutely beautiful audience members. When the lights went down, I went out, they were on it, perfect. And it was just, you just never know. You just do not know what grade of tosser there is. And as I say, I love a tosser that turns up and just was like, I'm ready for a great night, but they want to be the life and soul until the lights go down. That is perfect. But if they want to be the life and soul when the lights are down and you're on and the lights are on you, it's awful, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
Why have they paid the money?
Ridiculous. Now, with a lot of comedy gigs, and like both of us been gigging for a while, one of the main things, especially in London, that happened, there's a lot of bringer gigs.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's many down south coast. I don't think that virus has come in yet, but eventually it may happen. No, but with comedy gigs as a whole, you wrote an interesting article on like how to promote a gig, and one thing that really intrigued me was the bit about you saying putting flyers in takeaway shops because a lot of people go there.
Yeah.
And like I'm a bit, and you said something about them selling it for you. I don't know. I feel a bit iffy with them like saying, I'm not going to do an accent because that would be racist. So I'm going to do an Arnold Schwarzenegger accent to be safe. They say, come on, boss, I will sell you a ticket. And then they keep the money.
I still put flyers in takeaways now. I still do it, even for even for the same club that I started 11 years ago. Still go out, put the flyers out. Got a festival this summer over 3 days. I will still go out there and put a wodge of flyers in all the takeaways. I think what I probably meant by that is, again, I'm repeating myself, but you're that person all the time. Not the life and soul of the freezer section, but when people see you in a Chinese restaurant or in Indian takeaway or whatever it might be, you go in and go, oh, hi, can I leave some of these? And they go, yeah. and say, "Thanks very much, mate. I hope to see you there." And they go, "Yeah, great. What is it?" And you show them and talking about the acts or whatever. If you go in and just go out, mate, and just off and you're gone, they think, "Oh, that's a bit. Who's that bloke? What's this?" And they look at the leaflet and think, "Oh, he was a bit weird, wasn't he?" And you can't be how you want to be, is what I'm saying. You know, if this is the 100th place you've put a leaflet in, keep positive. You just never know whether that next person you pop some leaflets into is the one who's going to bring 10 people or be your most regular customer in 10 years' time, and they come to every show. And I run one at Spinnaker Tower, which is like the most obvious venue in the whole of South Coast, really. It's a huge, big, massive 100-meter high pointy spinnaker, and I still find people who live in Portsmouth who don't know we do a comedy night there, and that's 10 years in, and I'm like, where the hell have you been? Because we're there every month and I put leaflets everywhere. It's all over socials, in the newspaper, it's everywhere. You just don't know who that next person is that you're going to put a leaflet to, so you've always got to be, you know, on your game. And you don't know where putting a leaflet is going to get you a punter. So yeah, definitely. I'll make sure. I think what I meant was make sure you're selling. You know, you're always selling and you're friendly and you represent the club when you're in front of people, giving them some leaflets. So yeah, you've got to make sure that because you don't know, especially hair salons, for example. You know, they've got a pile of leaflets. I'll not only put leaflets down, but I'll give them a leaflet at the desk and go, "You might want to come if you want to, great comedy, blah blah blah." And then when they're cutting the people's hair for the rest of those next few days, somebody will bring it out and they go, "Yeah, I saw a leaflet for that." You just don't, it's a sales thing, but you've got to always be that sort of compare MC for your night when you're putting leaflets out, if that's something you decide to do. I don't know how it works in London. Do they put leaflets out everywhere? I don't know.
I think most of them don't. But there's the big clubs in London, the ones that are new that have set up that are going really well, like Vauxhall Comedy Club.
Yeah.
They're all on social media. And they're doing amazing. They do a
Yeah.
lot of Groupon deals, a lot
Okay.
of, but I do, and I
Yeah.
do a lot of fly. I just shove a lot of leaflets through the door.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's another. I have done that, leaflets through doors, certainly in the early days. I think it has its. I mean, we get so much junk now through the doors, don't we? But social media's obviously taken over a lot. Paid posts and stuff, and obviously Instagram and all, and TikTok and whatever to promote things. But I still think the full marketing mix is very valuable. You never know what you might be missing. For the festival that I'm doing end of July, people who've got prime location fencing or bushes on busy roads, I'm asking them to get in touch, and I put banners up on their bushes, on their fencing, on their walls, and they get a couple of tickets in return for putting a massive 8-foot banner on their fence for 2 months. I mean, I wouldn't do it, but some people are lovely. They come to all my gigs and they go, "Yeah, I'll put one up, James." And you just think, wow, it's on a junction where 150 cars pass an hour. It's worth its weight in gold. You've got to think of every angle. If you're going to do it, you might as well bloody do it, eh? If you're going to run a gig, don't run it and think, "Wow, if someone comes, brilliant." Don't put a poster in the toilets and a Facebook event and then think it's going to be fine. Make a smash hit of it. Make it an absolute, you know, success story, and really go for it. And it might be the next best thing that you've ever done. So I just think if you're going to go for something, go 100%.
Go in.
Yeah, go for it.
So one of the things that I want to ask. So you worked in sort of like say digital sales, did you say? Or say
No, marketing
marketing?
agency. So customers will ask us to come and create identities, images, brochures. Come and design and market products or services, and we put together a campaign. We put together the leaflets, the posters, the websites, all the branding, you name it, really. And I loved from a young age. I loved the idea of having that sort of umbrella managing everything for a business's identity and its image and the way it's perceived. So I think that's why, when I'm seeing someone in a chip shop and giving them a leaflet, I'm very conscious that is the first time they've ever experienced Comedy All Stars or whatever it is, my comedy club. That could be the first time. So you are the brand from that minute. So yeah, I think that's where it all kind of harps back from. Love it.
What are the, so starting in like a marketing background, what were the like 3 or 5 things that equipped you with before you became a comedy promoter?
Oh, crikey. I mean, that's a tricky question, mate. I think that I think what we've just touched on sort of really covered that. I think people don't realize the importance of every single part of your business. Even if you feel like what you're promoting or marketing is a comedian that you've got coming on stage on Friday night, that's not where it starts and ends. So whilst it seems we might be over egging the pudding a little bit, if you're a comic and you're thinking, I want to put on a local night in the function room above the pub, it's not about when that comedian walks on stage. It's how you are at that door taking people's tickets. It's how comfy the seats are or how positioned they are. It's how the vibe of the room feels. It's even how the pub is downstairs, or how easy it is to park, or how you answer the phone or reply to an email. It's every single thing. So that's my transferable awareness, if you like, from the marketing days. Don't ever think that there is a part of your business you can get away with being a bit shoddy or a bit average, because people will find that one particular chink in the armor and they'll use that to not come back to your gig. They'll use that as an excuse to say to their mates, I don't want to go to that anymore. The toilets were really grubby or whatever. You know what I mean? I had a 1-star review for my gig because the bar queues were long, and I just replied and went, "Did you enjoy the comedy?" Well, yeah, but 20 minutes to wait for a beer, mate. I just think, oh God. So someone will find something to justify why they don't want to come again. So you got to make sure that whatever you're doing, don't give them that opportunity. It seems a lot, doesn't it? When all you want to do is make someone laugh, but if something sours it for them, then everything unravels. Your plan.
I'm going to ask one more question, and that'll be it. What is
It's all
your
got so
address?
serious,
What is your
isn't it,
address? What is your address?
My address.
I'm joking. Yeah, guys, it's 131
Yeah,
Tooting
come on
Street,
over.
Portsmouth.
Yeah, it's James, Portsmouth. Yeah, gone are the days where you could have put that on an envelope and it would have reached me. But yeah. It's all good. This was a heavy one, Marvin. We got serious, didn't we?
Sorry, guys.
Isn't it funny though? The irony. It's such a serious conversation about something that is all about laughter. It's but you got to take all those serious things into account, I think, to make the laughter really work.
So before we go, I'm going to ask a sneaky question, and I'm going to pay you £5 for each point. Okay?
Oh Christ! Okay, give me an hour.
What are some guerrilla marketing things that you use to get an audience that people often overlook? I know a lot of people now, they think if they just get a big name or do a lot of Facebook ads, that's the majority of the effort I've seen in London, some of them, or they make it a bigger gig.
Yeah. I mean, the massive thing for me was get their email addresses, whatever it takes. When I first started my biggest club, I gave away 2 tickets and a signed poster of the acts on the night if they paid £1 for every entry they made to this draw. And on the draw, they gave their name and email address. So I was being paid to have their email addresses. It seems bizarre now. I mean, they still do it now, but you've then got a usable database that they are approving, and they're ticking and saying, yes, you can have my details to contact me in the future, and all the usual legal jargon. But they want to win free tickets. They want to win a poster of the night that's signed maybe by somebody that's relatively well known. And that is so valuable, because we're getting barraged, aren't we, with social media all the time, TV, internet, you name it, constantly. If you can get an email drop in, yes, again, everyone gets emailed loads, but it's a bit unusual these days. My spam seems to come through the socials more than anything. But if you can get an email that says, and the title is Comedy Tonight or Comedy Next Friday, they'll open it up. It's a well-designed email, well put together email. It's worth its weight in gold, I think. So don't ignore what I consider to be old school now, an email database from your punters. Get them to sign up. Tell them you'll send them some special offers. I think it's a great one. What else? I mean, there's nothing really unusual, I don't think, about anything I do these days. Back in the day, maybe it was, but I think just don't underrate every angle of keeping people happy when they're at your gigs. It's email database, and just get out there. Don't think they'll come to you.
So this is something that I've tried, and this is maybe but I do a text marketing. I don't take down people's emails. I text them.
Yeah, that's a nice one. I mean, and they give that to you.
Yeah, I asked them, could I take down your number, and then I put it in, and then I go out for dinner with them, and then no, that puts me in a dodgy light. But I don't know. It just, when I send an email, a lot of the times, but when it's through a text, I get I don't know. It seems to, or if I give them a call, that seems to have a bit more of a stronger effect in getting them to come to the gig.
Yeah, I mean, I think the marketing mix is there to cover all the bases, like we've already said. So, but there's nothing like catching people off guard with information about a gig. So that's a good way. I mean, maybe not. I wouldn't probably call anybody, but a text.
Okay.
Hiya. But no, it's a text. Great. Anything that can make them go, oh, did you see that? It's just I mean, in the old days, it would have been a plane flying through the sky, dragging a sign behind them, saying, no, it's the so-and-so festival this weekend, and you see it in the sky. It's a memorable way to get people's attention. I guess that's the key still these days. Some unusual way that's going to get their attention is the best way. So just keep trying to think of original ways to get people's attention, but always make sure that you put the date of the gig and how to buy tickets on that. The amount of times that I post it, and I'll think, oh God, I haven't put the bloody date on. And, it's just the simple stuff that can really make your promotion fall apart.
People are simple, aren't they?
Well, I am, yeah.
Just, or you could do what Frank did to Pat Butcher in EastEnders when he tried to get attention at a door.
Oh God, yeah, okay. I might get arrested these days.
That's true.
Depends where you put the flyer.
That's true.
Oh God, yeah.
Now, how do people find out about you?
I don't think they'd want to after that bit. Oh dear, I don't know. I mean, I'm on the old socials. I tend to. This is haunted me now. I put my socials are Comedy James, right? But now, whenever I do local promo, all local news presenters or whatever call me Comedy James. I sound like some sort of sideshow from a Butlins or something, but I'm not. That's not what I go under. That's not my hat. That's my Twitter and Facebook and stuff, Comedy James. But don't call me that in the street. Just James is fine.
Bond.
In fact, most audiences don't think comedy is relevant to my name either. Yeah, that's how you track me down. But yeah, don't send me any gig offers. I don't want them. No, it's if I know you're great, let's hook up. It's such a negative angle, isn't it, for a promoter? I don't want to hear from any comedians. Oh dear, no. This is the joy of it. There's so many gigs now. Do you feel this? It's really thriving after bounce back, hasn't it, after lockdowns? Just buzzing. The whole industry's buzzing. It's so overdue after the hardship we all had over those few years. So it's just a lovely time. So there's so many gigs out there. Yeah, just get out there and good luck.
And enjoy the show, guys. Okay.
Yeah, don't overthink everything the promoter's done in the background to allow you that 10 or 20 minutes on stage. Don't let it bring you down. Don't get upset about it. Maybe help out once in a while.
Exactly,
don't overthink it. Just have fun.
Okay, so you know where to get in touch with James. I'll give you his address as well.
Yeah.
I'll give you the pub that he goes to. The address of all his comedy shows.
Yeah, do that. That's fine. Ticket links.
You know where to go. If you like this podcast, give it a 5-star review on Amazon or iTunes. Subscribe. Yeah, I'll see you soon. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get some comedy promoters and bookers from other countries and see what reviews they say. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. Cheers, mate. You're a legend.
Well, but bon journée, everyone, which means good day in French, and I'll see you soon.